All right. Okay. The- Her personal story, Marion F's personal story, began long before that and is found in the first edition of Emotions Anonymous, 1978, pages 65 to 78. This is an abbreviation of that story. And she named her story A Prisoner of My Fears by Marion F, founder of Emotions Anonymous. My first recollection of fear was at age 5. We were visiting a house a long distance from home. I remember crouching in a corner in terror in the bedroom. I remember running through our home screaming for my mother one dark night when a windstorm blew out all of the kerosene lamps and I felt alone. Over a period of 7 years, I was in 5 or 6 tornadoes. During those tornadoes, I would kneel and pray, God, save me and I'll be a good girl forever. And until I found a 12-step program, I had a terrible fear of storms. We were taught that God was a punishing God, and I feared misbehaving according to our family standards. I knew I was going to hell. I had many other fears. All of them became worse as time went on. And one day when I was 15 and a junior in high school, I was called upon to read aloud. Suddenly, an uncontrollable panic overwhelmed me and I could not read. From that day on, I would panic whenever I was called upon to read, speak, or recite. I was obsessed with the idea of what will people think? I had 2 brothers, no sister. My brother, who was 2 years older than I, preferred to play with a girl cousin of ours 7 months older than I, and they did not want me with them. I felt rejected. I was jealous and resentful. I know my parents were the products of their upbringing, and they did the best they could. They did teach us to believe in God, to be industrious and honest, to help anyone in trouble, to study hard in school, to love and respect our country, to cook, bake, sew, handle a hammer and nails, and do all kinds of farm work. My parents were determined that all of us should go to college. I made all of my clothes. My father borrowed part of the money, and I worked 2 quarters for my room and board. I seemed to be dressed well enough as I was rushed for several sororities, a status symbol, and since I was able to play piano for singing and dancing in the dormitory, I made friends and had some feeling of being accepted. I covered my fear and panic there too. When I entered St. Cloud College, we were required to have a minor physical examination by a doctor provided by the college. I was frightened because at the age of 18, I had never been to a doctor. My heart beat very fast, so the doctor had me sit down for a few minutes. When he called me again, he said in jest, Don't do what Milton Stills did this morning. Milton Stills was a popular movie star then. I said, What did he do? The doctor answered, He dropped dead this morning. I panicked. I started listening to my heartbeat. I knew there must be something wrong. I don't know how I ever finished college. I would refrain from reciting rather than speak in class. I suffered terrible panic all the time, and traveling on the bus to and from college was torture. We had lost our farm by mortgage foreclosure, something which happened to many during the Depression. I always feared the talk of poverty. I also found a doctor who prescribed pills for me. She named the specific ones in the book, but I'm just substituting that with the word pills. I took them for about 10 years. Then came the miraculous pills. This continued for another 15 years. I drank socially. The pills did not seem to lessen my fears, but I learned that a couple drinks on top of the pills would help me forget my fears for a little while. I did not know the danger of combining pills and alcohol then. My fears had become progressively worse. I now had pains in my chest, dizziness, roaring in my ears. I thought I was having a stroke. I couldn't swallow, couldn't take a deep breath. I could not go anywhere, could not drive my car. I could not be in an elevator or go through a tunnel or be in deep woods. And an airplane was out of the question. I developed ulcers. I could not be at home alone. Then I had panic when my family was with me. I would say to myself, "You are warm, you are fed, you are clothed. You have a nice home. You are well. Your husband and children are with you. So why are you full of panic?" I did not know why. For the first 10 years after I met my present husband, I did not tell him of my fears. I would lie to him, giving some other excuse for not going someplace. And when I did tell him, it was very hard for him to understand because he had never experienced that kind of fear and panic. I was not permitted to see a psychiatrist because in our family, we were supposed to be adult and solve our own problems. Seeing a psychiatrist had not yet become a status symbol either. My resentment, anger, and self pity were also becoming a problem. At least once a week, I would lash out at the whole household, yelling, swearing, and saying the grandparents could just leave our house, knowing all the time there was no other place for them to go. I blamed everyone else and everything else for the way I was and how I hated myself for behaving the way I did. It felt as if I were on a train going down a railroad track with no brakes and I didn't know how to stop. I had such guilt feelings. Since I had been brought up to believe God was a punishing God, I feared him and I feared death. I was so miserable, I wanted to die, but I knew I would go to hell, so I couldn't die. On October 31st, 1965, in our local Sunday newspaper, an article appeared which told about the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous having been adapted for persons with emotional problems. I read it and I knew at once that this was something I must have. There were no local chapters in our area. I thought to myself, if there is no group in existence here by that time, maybe I can start one. But as I have seen hundreds of times in the 12-step program, my higher power, God, stepped in. The following February 1966, a friend of mine invited me to attend some Al Anon orientation sessions with her. I went with her and discovered that the 12 steps of the Al Anon program were exactly the same as those I had read about in the newspaper article. I continued to go to regular weekly meetings with my friend. She helped me to learn how to apply the steps to my life, and within 2 months had made noticeable progress, enough for my doctor to say, "Why don't you why do you wait to start a chapter here? Why don't you do it right away?" Since my panic would not permit me to go far from home, I had to look for a meeting place nearby. There was a community center in the park behind our house. I called the director for an appointment. My heart was beating hard as I talked to him. He listened and then said we could meet there. I thank God that he was receptive to this new concept of helping persons with emotional problems. I talked to my Al Anon friends and they said they would come to the meetings for a while. So the first chapter in the upper Midwest of what is now Emotions Anonymous started in St. Paul, Minnesota, April 12th, 1966. The first meeting, at that first meeting, about 12 persons were present. The existence of the group reached the new media and articles appeared in newspapers in St. Paul and Minneapolis. The following week, there were over 65 persons present, and I felt that I had a tiger by the tail. Attendance continued in large moments. In that fall of 1966, a member started a chapter in Minneapolis. We were surprised when another 65 persons attended. Other groups sprang up in these two cities and their suburbs and around Minnesota. Within 5 years, there were more than 30 groups in our state. From these, more chapters started in neighboring states. As has already been stated in the chapter on how it started, the feeling had developed among members in our state, a few other states, and in one foreign country, that was Germany, that we should dissociate from the organization with which we were affiliated and start our own fellowship under another name. The name Emotions Anonymous was chosen, and permission to adapt the 12 steps of AA for our use was granted by AA World Services Incorporated. The people and the program remained the same, only the name and the administration of the fellowship had changed. As I look back now, I believe the first 54 years of my life have been a combination of feelings of fear, anger, anxiety, inferiority, inadequacy, false arrogance, false pride, pretense, self pity, resentment, and envy. And until I started to practice the 12 step program in February of 1966, I did not know just how emotionally ill I was. I never knew who I was and never felt any self worth. I never felt I belonged. I always tried to do extra things for others to prove myself worthy or to please others. The first thing the 12 step program taught me was that my higher power is a loving God, not a punishing God. I always prayed wildly, God help me, God help me. Now I talk to God as a friend. I am not afraid of him. He is a loving friend who is with me all of the time and on whom I call several times a day. And since I feel okay with God, I am not as sensitive to any gossip or criticism from others. Within 6 months, all of my fears and panic were gone. I was out of my personal prison after 40 years of suffering. I can go any place now, drive my car, be in elevators, tunnels, or deep woods, or travel alone by airplane. I can be in a crowd. I can sit in a large audience without having to sit by the door so I can get out in a hurry. And I can speak in public, even on radio and TV for EA. Within that same 6 months, I was able to be off all mind and all mood altering pills, and I have had none for the past 11 years. The crippling, destructive anger, resentment, and self pity are gone. If they recur, they do not last long and are not severe. I have the tools of our program to deal with them. I feel a sense of self worth. I do not have to prove myself to anyone. I do not have to always be right. People do not have to agree with me, nor do I have to agree with everyone else. I had dispensed with false pride, pretense, putting on a front, and abnormal feelings of inadequacy. I am able to be more patient and to show my family and my 97-year-old mother, who still lives with us, that I love them. My father in law died at our house 5 years ago. I believe that my life was planned to bring me to the 12 step program so that I might find a beautiful, close contact, which I now have with God. Most of the time, I can accept myself as I am today. That is important to me. What I was yesterday is past, and what I might be tomorrow or in the future is in God's hands. Each day, I strive for the humility to do God's will in all things. I know that my life and the lives of my family are completely in the hands of God. Every day I thank Him for bringing me to this beautiful program and for the wonderful, loyal friends I have found in EA. What a good feeling it is to let go and let God. And that is Marion's story. She lived from 1911 to 2004 and was 93 years old at the time of death. And I am so grateful for her story, grateful for all of you and your patience and with me and getting it together. So thank you so much.